Hello, and welcome to Consumer, Cars, Tech Talk, and More with Phil Scott. And I am your host of this podcast, Phil Scott. It is my hope that listeners of this podcast will gain a lot of information, learn some new things, learn some consumer tips that will help them in terms of buying and saving and that sort. And I also want to do some tech talk, and at heart I am a car guy, so I plan to bring all of those elements and more into my podcast. So first of all, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I guess this whole thing started when I was a kid. My first memory of being in a car was when I must have been about 2 or 3 years old. And we were moving, my family was moving from one house to another. And I was kind of a rambunctious little guy from what I remember. I was kind of all over the place sometimes. I was very inquisitive and I liked to wander around and such. So, to keep me out of the way, my parents put me in the back seat of my dad's 1966 yellow Ford Mustang Fastback. And that is my first memory of being in a car. And I can remember sitting in that back seat while they loaded up the trunk with things. And I was just transfixed on the dashboard and the shiny gauges and the numbers and the gear shifter in the car and just how the dash looked and everything. And that kind of got me hooked on cars. I just fascinated with just the car itself. I still remember what it looks like. It was many years ago, but I still remember that car. And from then on, I was a car guy. I was hooked, and it was always my thing. I always loved to get toy cars when I was a kid. I had all kinds of cars, Mustangs. I may have had a few Corvettes and Firebirds and all kinds of toy cars growing up. And my dad, he liked to work on cars in the garage. He was a guy of varied interest. He would do body work on cars, and he would also fix the cars, work on the engines and that kind of thing out in the garage. So that kind of piqued my interest some too. I'm not too much into the fixing of cars. Like if I needed to change oil or do something simple like that, I could do that. But it's not that part that grips me about the car. It's just, for me, I love new and classic cars. But I can remember also being a little guy back in the Midwest where I grew up. And it was a big deal for me to go to the library and read car magazines. I read Motor Trend, Car and Driver, Road and Track. I'd read Popular Mechanics, and it was just a big deal for me to read about new cars and to see the spy shots for the new cars that were coming out. And I remember there was a photographer, his name was Jim Dunn. And his photos used to be published, I believe, in Popular Mechanics. And I used to love to see his photos. And he was just like this gung-ho spy photographer for cars. And that was pretty amazing. It was pretty awesome to see his work, too. But yeah, I'm a car guy. And so in the years since then, when I was in grad school, I actually wrote my master's thesis on the Corvette and the Mustang and why they are icons in American culture. And my master's program took about 4 years to complete. And I'd say the last year and a half, it was just research and writing. And it was all worth it. I mean, I had an opportunity to do my master's thesis on a subject that was just absolutely fascinating and fun for me. Don't get me wrong, it was a lot of work, but it was fun too. So from that, after I graduated, probably about 3.5 years or so, probably a little bit longer, but it was pretty close to 3 or 4 years after I graduated. It was almost 4, not quite that. I started my own car blog called The Car Exam. And then after that, probably 3 years after that, it kind of morphed into more consumer reviews and food reviews, and it became Consumer and Car Exam. And so not only would I write car reviews and special interest stories every now and then, but I write food reviews and other reviews too. So I love the writing aspect, and I've also done some freelance writing for Power Auto Media. I've written some articles about the Corvette and the Mustang. Corvette for sure. Actually, I take that back. It was the Corvette, and I wrote about Firebirds. I haven't looked at my articles in a while, and it's been a good 6 years since I've written about them. But it was I wrote articles about the Corvette and the Firebird, and you can still find those articles on their website. But anyway, love to write about cars. I love going to car shows. Been to the LA Auto Show a number of times. San Diego International Auto Show a number of times over the years as well. So I enjoy covering auto shows, and it's a blast, especially the media days, just to see the unveiling of new cars and to have the auto executives talk about their products there. It's a pretty neat experience. And a couple of times, there have been I've run into some famous people. Carroll Shelby, actually. It was the year before he passed. He was at the LA Auto Show, and he was there. So, gosh, he did so many wonderful things with the Mustang from the 60s on. And so I crossed paths with him, and I crossed paths with, there was an actress, Paula Patton. She was there. Heidi Klum was at the LA Auto Show one year. And so I got up close and personal with Heidi Klum, photographically speaking. I got some pictures of her. And there's some other famous people I've had an opportunity to cross paths with over the years. But I digress. I also am an educator. So before this whole coronavirus thing shut everything down, I was testing students, elementary students. And I love working with kids. That's another joy that I've had in my life, from working with kids. I love helping kids learn and helping them feel safe and happy and being a positive role model and influence in their life. So I've been lucky enough to do that. Also, recently, within the past year, I became a certified commercial drone pilot. So that kind of happened by accident, but it was a happy accident. And now I've got many hours of flying time, flying my own drone. It's a DJI Phantom 4. And the Phantom 4 Pro V2.0 to be exact. And I love that drone. And it's just been a wonderful experience to get out and to see the world from a different point of view and in a different way. And I hope to do a lot of fantastic and amazing things with that. As a matter of fact, I have a YouTube channel called Backyard Adventures TV. Now, it's Backyard Adventures with an exclamation point after the word adventures, and then TV. So that's important to know, because when you're looking it up on YouTube, you have to type in the exclamation point to get, and then write TV after Backyard Adventures to find it pretty easily. So, and I've done a number of videos, and within the past, I'd say 7 months now or so, I've been able to, since I learned to fly the drone and earn my pilot's license, because the first part of the training was ground school. So we had, gosh, it was from, I want to say late August until late September. It was mainly learning the ins and outs of flying and the rules, so we could take the test and pass. And I did pass on the first try, yay. And so after that, it was just flying, and so I had another course too, where I was flying and doing mapping and that kind of thing. So the drone flying and the whole drone experience has been awesome. And so I want to talk about that. That'll be part of my tech talk on the podcast. I'm trying to think. I think I'll save the other things about myself, because I don't want to tell you too much about myself at the start. But I will add one more thing. What got me into wanting to even do a podcast and is when I was young, I used to listen to a lot of talk radio, and I still do. And it just fascinated me to, especially it was late night talk radio, and so I'd fall asleep listening to these talk show hosts, and it was fun. And I can remember in my high school yearbook, I wrote my senior year that one of the things that I wanted to accomplish after graduating in my professional life was to become a radio talk show host. And that never came to fruition until now, with the podcast. So I'm pretty happy about that. I also said I wanted to be a photojournalist, and I have been doing that too, with my writing. So it's been pretty cool to finally put this into motion and hopefully help a lot of people along the way. As I say in my description on the Anchor website for my podcast here, I want to cover a variety of consumer issues and topics. I want to talk about cars. I want to do some tech talk with drones, computers, phones, and more. And I want to talk about other things too, since I have such a wide variety of interests. And hey, now and then there might be even a little bit of sports talk too. One thing I don't want to talk about very much, if at all, and I pretty much don't want to talk about this at all, is politics. I want my show to be an escape from the daily grind that is our lives. So I don't want to talk about politics. So you will probably rarely, if ever, hear me talk about anything political. So I won't even go down that path. So it'll just be consumer talk, cars, tech talk, and some more stuff. Hopefully as fun for you as it will be for me. One other thing I really wanted to touch on before I move on is COVID talk. I mean, gosh, that's been ruling our lives, for the past almost 4 months now, since March. This is July now. And my school year testing students was brought to a halt because of the coronavirus, and of course because all of the schools were shut down and everyone had to shelter in place. And I happen to be out here in Southern California. That's where I'm broadcasting from now. And it's been an interesting thing to see how things have opened, and then now some things are closing again, bars and whatnot, because of the spread of the virus. But you know what? My advice is to just try to stay safe. Keep those who are vulnerable to the virus, keep them safe and sheltered away. If you're out and about, social distancing, please do it. Be smart, people. I don't want to preach to people. I just want to say, hey, just be safe out there. Use common sense. Don't do stupid things. And hopefully um, they'll find some kind of vaccine for this, and everybody can get back to living semi or near normal existence the way we did before all this. But it will come. You just have to be positive and just try to live your life day by day. Take it a day at a time. Don't take things for granted, and just be safe out there, everybody. Be safe. Okay. So I'm gonna keep this podcast. I'm kind of shorter than what I would normally do. I want to keep it probably my other podcast between 15 to 30 minutes, but we'll see. But for the first one, let me do some quick consumer talk. Okay. First of all, one thing that I noticed is when you're buying, let's just say, a good example is ice cream. I don't know if you've noticed this, but you seem to be paying more for less. And I've noticed candy bars over the years have gotten small, even though I don't eat candy bars, really. I don't eat that much candy. But things seem to be shrinking, and you seem to be paying just as much, or if not more. And a good example of this is this was back in early March, I think, late February, early March. And I like to drink this sports drink called Powerade, and a lot of you are probably familiar with that. It's like Gatorade, but I like the taste of Powerade better. But anyway, I was in this grocery store, and I picked up the bottle, and it looked different. And my favorite kind is like strawberry lemonade. And I picked up the bottle, and it was shaped differently, and I noticed that it seemed smaller. So, as luck would have it, the smaller bottles were on the shelves with the old bottles. They still had some old bottles. Now, I looked at the old bottle, and it said it was 32 ounces. Okay, and I'm like, yeah, that's what Gatorade was, too. So then I looked at the newer bottle, and it was like 28.4 ounces or something. Like, what in the world is this? They're shrinking my Powerade bottles. I'm like, I can't believe this. So I mean, that just seems to be commonplace. So it just seems like you're paying more for less, and it's like, just be careful. I mean, cereal boxes, I've noticed over the years, have been shrinking. Everything seems to be shrinking, but yet you're paying more for it. So boo for the makers of Powerade for doing that. That's kind of a bummer, but I'll still buy it. I still buy it because I like it better than Gatorade, so I've still been buying it, but I'm just kind of bummed out that they would do that. So make sure you read the labels and if you have any fun or interesting things you want to share with me about consumer wise and such, you can. I'll try to have an email posted or a message link posted up for you guys to message me, and maybe I can discuss some of your messages and topics on air. That would be fun. I'd love to do that. The economy. I want to just quickly go over that. I mean, because of the whole coronavirus thing, millions of people have lost their jobs. Things, hopefully, as people start to get back to work, things seem to be getting better, but there are a lot of people, especially in the restaurant business and the service industry, who are still in bad shape, and especially retail too, because there are stores that are closing and going bankrupt, and they were in trouble before the coronavirus. But some of the businesses like Pier 1, they're gone. They're going to be done. And movie theaters, they've had to shut down, of course, and so they're in financial trouble, and hopefully they can get back to getting some business and getting people back in. But again, everything is relying upon social distancing and everything, so things will not be totally back to normal anytime soon on those fronts. And then, of course, I mentioned sports, a little bit of sports. Even that's not normal. So you've got the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA trying to come back, and we'll see how that goes. I don't know. And you still have I've heard some colleges have canceled their fall sports. So that means no football for some colleges, and maybe it ends up being most every college in the country. I don't know. It just depends on how all this whole coronavirus thing plays out. But anyway, that is that on that front. So I basically one of the things that I really want to get into in future episodes is new cars. I know everyone's noticed that SUVs and trucks pretty much rule, and crossovers. They rule the automotive landscape now. So it'll be interesting to see what auto manufacturers are going to do. They've killed off a lot of sedans and cars. At least the American car companies have, and some other imports. They've done that too. Overseas manufacturers, they've done that. Some are still sticking to cars too. Like I noticed Toyota and Honda, Kia, and Hyundai. They seem to be. They have a pretty good balance of both, I think. And so we'll see. We'll see. It's like the automotive market tends to ebb and flow. And another example of that is now everything is going electric, it seems. So I remember first, last decade, hybrids started to come into play. And then fast forward 10 years, and now electric is the big thing on the future. And I think a couple of car models that really pushed that along was you have the Nissan Leaf, that really normalized electric cars, and of course the mammoth that is Tesla. Elon Musk, man, that guy. I mean, to be able to do what he's done, and you've got SpaceX, and you've got the Falcon rockets, and people going back up into space. Americans actually launching into space from American soil again, which is pretty cool, I must say. So yeah, you've got electric cars now that look like they are going to be the norm for the future. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I want to talk about cars and new models that are going to be coming up for the 2021 model year. I'm sure there are, in fact, some 2021s out already. But we'll get into that in later episodes of my podcast. So with that, I'm going to wrap this up. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening to my first ever podcast, Consumers, Cars, Tech Talk, and More, with me, Phil Scott. And I look forward to doing even more talk with you guys and having guests, and let's see where this goes. So with that, everyone be safe, have a wonderful day, and take care of yourselves, everybody. Be safe out there. Bye-bye.